Hi, it's George from Flashmark. Today, what I wanted to run you through was how I look at Google search ads in general and how I assess feasibility for clients. So Google ads can work very well for some clients, and for some it doesn't work that well just because of the unit economics of the business. And today I want to show you what I've developed, which is what I call a speed-based forecast. Now, every business knows that speed is advantageous because it leads to, quicker decisions lead to quicker outcomes, right? That's the best way of thinking about it. But with Google Ads, when I talk about speed, I really mean one thing, which is how many ads you can have clicked on in a certain amount of time, right? And there are three main variables that affect that. The first one is budget. So Google works on a cost per click basis. So obviously with an infinite budget, you can have all the clicks, but when you don't have an infinite budget, you kind of have to decide how many clicks you can have per day. After budget is capacity. So capacity is like, imagine you had all the budget in the world, but you didn't have the team to facilitate and manage those leads. So all good if I can get you 1,000 leads a day, but if you've only got one guy that can handle 10 leads a day, what's the point of paying for the other rest of them, right? And then finally, there's demand. So Google search ads work based on what people are searching. So if you have all the budget and all the capacity, but nobody's actually searching for that service or product that you're offering, then you really can't get up to that speed. So the best way of thinking about things like that is like startups. Like Airbnb couldn't have used Google ads on their first day, Google search ads on their first day. Airbnb couldn't have used them because nobody knew they existed and nobody was aware that that service was out there, so they weren't searching for it. So they would have had to find different marketing channels, which they did. So the way this document works is it goes off the key drivers at the top, and then that ends up filling out the speed-based forecasts. And I've got them split into thresholds of 100% speed, 50% speed, and 25% speed. Now, obviously, you can get more leads than what I'm saying than 100%, but what I'm calling 100% is like speed efficiency. So on a long run average cost curve in economics, you actually start with really high costs, but as you increase output, your costs actually go to this point at the bottom, which is called a technical optimum. And again, when you keep increasing your output, your costs actually rise a little bit, which means in the realm of Google Ads, you can have this technical optimum where you're getting an efficient amount of leads. Let's say you're getting $100 per lead. But if you increased your budget anymore and got more leads, you'd actually push past that technical optimum and you'd start getting more leads, but they might cost you more on average, because imagine trying to capture the whole market. Not every lead there is going to be as efficient as capturing some of the market, right? So that's what I mean by those percentages there. And then we've got these key drivers, which I'll go through, and then each of these have the same column. And then for each of these speeds, I've got the 6-month and 12-month forecast. So just going quickly across each of these, cost per click. So that's the auction value that Google assigns to your keyword. The sales conversion rate is per lead, how many of them do you convert? So per X amount of leads, how many of them do you convert as a sale? Your customer lifetime value, so how much value do you get out of your customer, normally financial value, for the lifetime of their existence with your business. Cost per lead, for Flashmark, we look at getting a 10% conversion rate on clicks. So if you think about, if every click is $10 and we have a 10% conversion rate, just imagine 10 of those is going to be your cost per lead. So normally if I type in, well, what's definitely going to happen is if I type in 10, it's going to come up as 100 there, right? And you can see when I update these figures, all the rest of them update. And then an agency monthly fee. So my services are not free, unfortunately, but you'll find that there are better things to optimize than the agency monthly fee, because you have all this opportunity above you and you have all of this risk down below you, that you'll see that over time, even when I do add agency fees in certain interesting scenarios, you'll find that, yes, although the agency fee is consistently dipping into your costs and then of course your profits, you're going to find that, that's normally what people quarrel about, when really they should be focusing on these other things first and foremost, maybe unless they're exorbitant fees. So I think I'll go through the rest of these as I run through the key drivers for one example. And an example that I'm pretty comfortable with running through is mortgage brokers for Australia. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in these key drivers here as if I was having a customer with a mortgage, as if I was having a conversation with a mortgage broker customer. So typically what I'd ask them is, like what exactly are they trying to target? What keywords? Like how would somebody search for them? And if they're looking for the basic thing like, mortgage broker near me, home loan specialist, things like that, I found that across Australia, the average cost per click is normally around $30, which is actually quite an expensive click compared to other industries, right? So already you can see that if you were just spending on Google Ads, you've got these different numbers that are popping up here with your losses and blah, blah, blah. Don't worry until they're all filled out. And then I would go through and I'd say, okay, great. Let's say I did get you leads. Let's say I got you 10. How many of them would you actually convert? And a healthy conversion rate, a sales conversion rate would be 1 in 5, so 20%. So if we gave this mortgage broker a 20% sales conversion rate, then, some more numbers fill in. And then customer lifetime value. So I know that dealing with mortgage brokers, you can have an initial drawdown be worth $3,000 to $4,000, depending on the city and depending on the property that they're giving the money out for. And then you've got trail on the end of it. So just considering all that, let's just say that up front, when you get a new mortgage broker customer, you earn $4,000 for that first sale, right? And then for the time being, we'll leave out the agency monthly fee so we can see just how the Google search ads numbers work. So then going across the columns here for the forecast, you can see that all the numbers are now filled in except for the agency costs. And the big important thing to note that probably doesn't make sense initially is this gold column. So I want to be the first to point out on this video that no Google search marketer like myself truly knows what's underneath the hood in like the Google search ad system. So Google is a very large company and they have a lot of proprietary software. And what you do as an advertiser is you basically enter an agreement with Google where you say, hey, I see the value in search. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop a marketing system using your AI machine learning practices, right? And then you basically have to trust Google to do its job. Now, Google gives a lot of recommendations, but if you think about it, Google has a lot of different customers and Google wants to serve some customers really well because they make them the most money. So normally, if you're a small to medium business and you're running Google Ads, those recommendations don't make as much sense to you as they would for like, the big companies like the Walmarts and the Amazons of the world, right? So the Google Ads community, and if you go and you do some search on YouTube and you find some other content creators, you'll find that more often than not, everyone kind of agrees that this is the best way to run Google Ads, which is you want 10 clicks a day, at least for the first 30 days. And then after that, you want to be looking for 25 to 30 leads. And this is primarily for service-based businesses. But if you're doing e-commerce, those 10 clicks per day will then turn into, 25 to 30 conversions or sales per day, right? Now, when we go and we know these things and we know that, well, we want this many clicks and then we want this many leads, and then we also know what a cost per lead is and then what a cost per click is, that is a very, very good way to determine what budget you should be playing with based on your appetite or the speed that you're working with, right? So let's say that we're working with 100% speed for mortgage brokers. And I say, well, the best way to do this is if you have 300 clicks in the first month, and that's going to cost you $9,000 per month. Now, keep in mind, all of these numbers are excluding tax. So in Australia, there's no GST added here. It's added on top of that, and it is all throughout this system. So you have to be wary that these numbers plus GST. But you see that 300 clicks plus $30 equals $9,000, right? And then because we know that the 25 to 30 leads we're looking for, and we know that, about 10 clicks leads to 1 lead, well, then you can say that that budget is safely going to be aiming for, 30 leads per month, because 300 clicks divided by 10 equals, 30 leads. And then you get these numbers, right? And so you've got Google ad spend, you've got the agency cost, which I've left as 0 for now, and then the combined costs. The new leads, which is how many leads come in per month based on your ad spend, and this is just forecast numbers, keep in mind. New customers, so from those leads, how many of them turn into new customers? So it's always going to be a lower number than leads. The new customer value. Now this is the one that I want to point out the most, that this is essentially revenue, but it works on an accrual basis, so like accounting. So for instance, if you get a customer that comes in on month 1 from Google Ads, let's say you start your conversations there and they're ready to buy and blah, 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 but you don't receive payment until month 10, in this forecasting framework, I just say that you receive the value of the customer from month 1, even if the payment goes to 10, 12, 14, 24. It's only just because we're forecasting here, and every business has a really different sales cycle. So it's very hard for me to know every customer's individual sales cycle unless they tell me, and then we can work with some more accurate figures. So that's why I put it as new customer value, and I don't want to trick you and say that you're going to incur the revenue in that month. Then you have the cost of acquiring customers, and you see the interesting thing there is that it starts at here because I say for the first month you don't get any customers because we're working on clicks, and then over time that goes from undefined or infinite cost of acquiring customer dollars to a much lower amount. Now I think it's probably a good time to point out this first line here. So why speed is very important and why I'm showing these different thresholds of 100%, 50%, 25% is really mainly because of this first month. So the way that Google search ads work is for the first month, you're a new advertiser, Google knows nothing about you and you know nothing about Google. So you have to develop a relationship through data and signals. And that's what this first month is all about. This first month, we have a goal of getting data. We want Google to get clicks so Google can learn about who we are, who our customers are, what their search and conversion behavior is like. And then from after that first month, we then switch into conversion optimization mode or maximization mode. And these are actually settings in Google. So when I start a campaign with any new customer, I will suggest that the customer starts with click maximization. And then after the first month, when we have enough data, we'll go into conversion maximization, right? But when you're in clicks maximization, I take a very conservative estimate and I say that for the first month, you are not going to get any leads, and therefore you're not going to get any new customers and you're not going to get any new customer value, and the cost of acquiring customers is going to be infinity, right? The real truth is, in this first month, and the whole reason why we do it is that if you set up all your conversion tracking properly and you have a funnel where people can go through and actually check out or convert with a form or a phone call, some leads will come through. Not many, but like 2, 3, 4, 5 in the first month. And that's all you need to then say to Google, essentially you go, hey, that first month when we were only looking for clicks, remember when those couple of conversions came through? Now that we have the signals for the people that converted, why don't we change our goal to then focus on maximize conversions? And that's where month 2 comes in, and you can see that the new leads goes from 0 to 12 here. Now the reason I've put 12 is just I wanted to be more conservative on this first month because Google's going to go through a learning period and it's going to be using those signals for the first time. And even though we're going to be looking for 25 to 30 leads across month 2 onwards, I just say that it's working at like 50-ish% efficiency. So, half and a little bit less than 28 per month, which is in between 25 and 30, is 12, right? So I'm just saying, well, you're going to get half the amount of leads, and then going forward, what you're looking for is this consistent system that's actually paying you more leads per month consistently. And that is the whole purpose of ads. You want consistent influx of leads. You don't want to go, hey, you don't want inconsistency when you're paying for Google Ads. Unfortunately, some months will be good, some months will be bad, but on average, and this is all about a game of averages, you want to be getting consistent leads through the door. Cool. So what we've got here now, because we've entered all these key drivers, are different comparisons for 100% speed, 50% speed, and 25% speed. And you can see that the big problem with going from 100% speed to 50% speed is if I have a customer and they straight out say to me, they just go, $9,000 is a lot of money. They actually don't say that. They go, $9,000 is expensive. And, you know, I've had a lot of these conversations before, and I've had a lot of people tell me that the cost of Google Ads is way too expensive. But let's say they say $9,000 is so expensive that I'm not willing to pay it. I want to pay half of that, $4,500 a month. What happens is you've got $9,000 at 100% speed. Half that, you got $4,500. That makes it 50% speed. But then what happens is this clicks phase still needs to happen. You still need to get these 300 clicks. It's an objective. But what happens is you have to get that over 2 months instead of 1 month. And what does that mean for your forecasting? It means that for the first 2 months, you're going to be wearing the cost of time of not receiving revenue. And that's the big trick with Google Ads. I understand that $9,000 is a lot of money because, you know, it's not something that people spend every day. But it's also, when you look at it in terms of what you get back, well, $9,000 and go to one of these later months is actually 2 and a bit customers' first time purchases, right? For a mortgage broker. So if you go here and you go, well, how many do I get a month? And you get 5.6 customers per month, you know, round that up or down to 5 or 6. Well, you go, well, Google Ads costs me just over 2 customers per month, and I get back 5 or 6 customers per month. $9,000 is a lot of money, but is it expensive? You know, I'll leave that for you guys to decide. You may not have the appetite or the budget right now, but expensive, is that the right word to be using? So now what I do here is I go between the 100%, 50%, and then 25%, and I look at these little 6 to 12 month forecasts. And I say, well, imagine you get all the money up front, like it's not working on an accrual basis, or it is working on an accrual basis. You got revenue, cost, profit, and over 6 months, you've made $45,000 in accrued value. That's great. Over 12 months, you made $125,000. Fantastic. When you half your speed, you do not half your profit. You reduce it by 90%. And that is without any agency costs, keep in mind. This is literally just because of time. So what happens is, if you just look at it logically, you've spent 2 months generating data. Generating data that is valuable, and eventually after 12 months, you will have generated as much profit as you had in the 6 months had you been running at 100% speed. So if you can find a way to increase your budget and increase your appetite to the right speed, then you will actually incur more value quicker, right? And there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I understand that it's not for everyone, but it is important to note. Now, the tricky bit, and sometimes the hardest conversation to have with people who want to do this, even after I show them, is that at 25%, you have 4 months of not accruing any leads or any customers because you're just telling Google to get you clicks, not conversions. So you actually incur a loss for the first 6 months and then a slight profit in the first 12 months. But remember again that we're talking based on accrual bases, plus this forecast has some limitations, like you can't get 2.8 customers per month. People are people, and you can't split them up into 0.8 of a person. So you either get 2 or 3, or here you get 0.6 or 0. So you can see that you could potentially have 0 for a long time, and that could be very, very frustrating and costly for a lot of people, anyone really. So that in a nutshell is how I would assess a typical mortgage broker and how I would show them their options. And then we have the added factor of the agency fee. So my agency fee can range depending on what type of work that I have to do and what type of services that I have to offer. You know, people come in at different stages with different needs, but let's say that like an average agency fee is something like $1,500 a month. And you can see, yes, that it does chew up the profits initially. So you went from 45,000 in this 6 month period to 36,000. But it didn't make it 0, right? And remember that we were at 45,000 before. I'll just show you again. Like we were at 0 for agency fee, and we're at 45,200, right? And now I'll bump the agency fee to 1,500. And this is where customers kind of come in and they, like, everyone knows how to talk numbers, but nobody really understands the numbers of Google Ads and how that is both marketing and sales. So marketing is going to incur you a fee, a people fee at some point. It's either going to be your time or somebody in your team's time or my time, right? The only difference is I'll charge you and you'll receive an invoice, whereas you and your team might just not see the time that you're losing by learning and optimizing for Google Ads, and also the ad spend that you're using ineffectively. So what happens is people try to drive you down on this agency monthly fee. Fair enough. Like, I understand that if $9,000 is a lot of money, $1,500 seems like a lot of money as well. But what if you thought about it differently, and what if you did the maths a little bit differently in your favor? So if I'm telling you that best practice isn't to optimize your agency fee, like, this is the guy spending your money. Like, don't skimp him. Even if you do run with me or another agency, just like remember that this guy should be your friend and you should want him to do the best for you, because all people have emotional perspectives of others, and the nicer everyone treats each other, the better results everyone's going to get, is my opinion. So, okay, you don't want to eat this guy's lunch, and this is Google's market rate, so you can't really do much about that if you want certain keywords. And then obviously your lead is your conversion rate of that cost per click. 10% is very good. So yes, you could increase to more than 10%, and different services have done that in the past, and different products and different pages and all that. But like, you should be happy with 10% on average, and there is more room to move in these above two, which are the sales conversion rate and the customer lifetime value. So if I go and make this sales conversion rate from being 1 in 5, 20%, to being close to 1 in 3, 30%, you can see that the $45,000 previous just turned into $85,000. So if you take the time to analyze the leads and then see what's happening and where you're losing customers, and then breaking that down and then optimizing that process, kind of like it was its own little marketing system, you can see that you can pay the same amount for Google Ads and make almost double the money, right? And that's really, really powerful to know that marketing doesn't stop at marketing. It's just the point where sales starts, right? So even if we take that back to 20%, and we go here and we say, well, profit was, sorry, it's probably going to be even more. So what I did by accident was I left in the agency fee. So it actually did double, more than double. So 20% to 30% actually went to 94,800. But if I go down to 20%, it's back to 45,000, which is the number that we used previously. Let's make it 21%. And you see that even changing it to 21%, you've already changed those figures like quite significantly, and that's just 1% improvement. So this is like the old adage, 1% better every day. Like, it actually works a lot when you're talking about a system that has interrelated parts. So taking that down to 20% so we can keep it all equal. The other option we have is customer lifetime value. Now, what's really, really important with customer lifetime value, and like what I really want every person who does business to know, is that you might pay to acquire a Google customer once, but that does not mean you can only let them purchase once. Like, if they came to your door every day and just offered to give you $100, you'd take it every day. So why not use that mentality in your business a little bit? So what you could do here, in order to get more money off of your customers, is to service them more. So you could do repeat transactions. So let's say, as a mortgage broker, if they go buy a holiday house, you're also going to be doing the mortgage for that. If they want to refinance, you can do that, assuming you're not getting clawback. And that's more value you get from the customers. Then you can also have other services. So let's say you're a mortgage broker and you're like, well, what else do my customers need help with? And then you go, well, what about asset finance? What about if you just started doing some crazy private lending at high interest rates? You became a little bit of a loan shark. Not saying to do it, but you could. And then what happens is, per customer, instead of a system that only pulls out one transaction from them, what if you pulled out two and you made 4,000 into 8,000 per customer? You can see that that has one of the most significant increases in value over the 6 to 12 month period. And I'm only using the 100%. Obviously, it happens over the 50 and 25% as well. But this is where the numbers are neatest, and I'm actually running the most optimal system, right? Now, something else that is really important to remember is, let's say we go back to all the regular figures, and I'll even add in the agency fee. This is kind of what Google Ads could look like for a mortgage broker right now, 27th of October 2025, right? That's when I'm doing these numbers. And the logic and the heuristics carry out for the rest of the time, probably not just in Google Ads, but any strategy that, you know, works with percentages and funnels, blah, blah, blah. What I want to make very clear is this is just what's on paper. So you're running a business, and while you win customers and while you win leads, there's more value that comes out of them rather than just money. So obviously there's you know, money is a huge factor, but what you really want to remember is that you're still trying to grow and improve your business in any which way you can. So as you incur a customer from Google, like that's $4,000 up front, but that's also an avenue for referrals. So the more you develop that relationship with the customer, let's say he's got 5 friends, yeah, you may have made $4,000 on paper from one customer, but are you really assessing how much you've gotten off referrals from that guy that you acquired from Google Ads? And had you not done Google Ads, you would not have gotten those referrals. It's very, very hard to measure, but it's important to know that it's real when you're making your decision to do something. Because sometimes, you know, the numbers don't stack. But if you know that you can find neat little tricks and your agency is charging you, let's say an exorbitant amount, let's say they're charging you $10,000, but you know that your customers actually give you back $10,000 in real value, you'll still find that your system is pretty profitable even with an expensive agency, depending on what they do, right? And I think that's one of the most important things is, like, even though you generate leads that might not come through, even though you get customers that might not be the greatest, even though you might get some headaches, you also get referrals, you get avenues to develop new opportunities or services because customers give you ideas and feedback on your business. You get a better overview of what's happening because as customers give feedback, they also point out problems. They tell you what they're experiencing. You know, there's a notion of you're paying for growth with Google, and that is not just monetary. It is also qualitative. You know, you learn from these people that you serve, and it's important to keep that front of mind. I think that's pretty much it. It is a big, hairy document, but I think I've done a pretty good job of explaining what the numbers mean and how they all relate to these key drivers. Just remember not to give your marketing guy too hard a time because yes, they need to eat too. But if you can develop a system where, you know, your lifetime value and your sales conversion rate are healthy enough, you might as well pay the guy to run your Google Ads for you because, you know, if he's generating a good enough conversion rate like we do, then, you know, you're going to get the value, he's going to get the value, and you guys are going to have a nice, healthy relationship together. If you or anyone you know would like me to run Google Ads specifically for your business, you can reach out to me at george@flashmark.com.au. Happy to help out. Thanks, guys. See you later.